Michael, welcome to the CIO Zone.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Tell our members a little bit about your role at IBM.
I'm Director of Portfolio Strategy for our information management portfolio within Software Group. So all of the technology within Software Group that focuses on helping companies to deal with heterogeneous information, manage it, govern it, integrate it together, and deliver it where it needs to go. That's my portfolio within the organization.
What is your typical day like? Are you interacting with customers most of the time?
I spend probably about at least half my time with customers, typically listening to what types of things they're trying to do. Typically the lens is always to try to understand what the outcome they're trying to achieve is.
Not a bad starting point.
Yeah, it's always a good starting point. Unfortunately, when you have the conversation, people tend to be on the other side of the equation saying, okay, this is what I need. I want to have this kind of technology component.
But they really mean this is what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you want that? Exactly what are you trying to do with that is usually how the questioning goes. But yeah, about half my time on that. A lot of time with our engineering team internally. To try to help guide the direction of the product, and a lot of time with our sales team to help them to understand how to have that conversation with customers and how to position our portfolio so that they can more effectively meet the needs of our customers.
Are you involved with acquisition as well as with product development?
In my group, we've done 3 acquisitions in the last year. So very interesting time to be in IBM. Lots of acquisitions,
I would say.
And actually a great space as well, because there's so much activity. There's so many great companies in this space that really have fantastic technologies and fantastic ways of addressing the business problems of our customers.
What kind of interesting stories are you hearing or conversations are you having at this conference?
One of the interesting things is that analytics has become cool. That's what's fascinating to me. Is you actually have Java developers and people that have never even paid attention to information. All of a sudden, they're interested in it, right?
It used to be the cure for insomnia.
That's right. Yeah. So it was a couple mathematicians in the corner cranking away. So I think the idea of analytics sort of mainstreaming, becoming something that's democratized and that you put into the hands of everybody within your business, whether it's people that are trying to make decisions at the point of impact. So if it's somebody in a store that's trying to make a decision on how to best service a customer, or if it's somebody in a hospital who's trying to make a decision about the best patient care, or even within processes to make these decisions in an automated way as part of an automated process. That's really where a lot of the conversation has been.
Not all organizations know how to consume the output of these things and how to apply them.
Yep.
For example, you tossed out as one of the outcomes, you can change your processes. Mm-hmm. Well, we know how painful that is for a company to do.
Absolutely.
And if they're not in the mindset or even not looking for that when they start analyzing the data, they may not really be able to, let's say, leverage it to the greatest extent. How do you approach that kind of issue?
I actually think the fundamental first step that every company has to take is to get their arms around their information, right? And make sure that all of what they're doing is based on a foundation of trusted information. And that's really where we see a lot of the mistakes made. People want to jump to the end, right? They say, well, great, let's start embedding analytics and doing analytics. And if they're doing analytics against bad data, guess what? You're going to magically have bad decisions, right?
It's like putting a pinstripe on a car.
Exactly. It's exactly right. So I think the net on it is that the companies really need to start with a focus on how do I take this sea of information spread across all my systems and align it to the business need. Right, and what does that look like? How do I do that? What does the business actually want? In the same way I was talking about how we ask questions about what are you really trying to achieve.
Right.
You have to ask the question to the business. What are you trying to measure? What decisions do you need to make from this information? And then go out into all these systems that have been around for years and years and try to figure out how do I get that information out of there. And so that first step of establishing trusted information, first of all establishing what the business wants, and then figuring out where to go get it, and then how to pull it together into a cohesive whole that tells the story the business needs and does it in a way that ensures the quality and the effectiveness of that information is the first critical step. Analytics, frankly, is the easy part, right? But layering on visualization, layering on analytics that sit on top of that is relatively easy. I mean, there's technologies, obviously our Cognos portfolio, make it very simple to show that information in different ways and deliver it to the specific needs of the business. Not that there's not challenges in implementing it, but that's relatively easy compared to the other stuff. And as far as embedding in processes and changing processes, that's very hard. So if you get into the automation world, one of the things that's been great is this huge investment in service-oriented architecture that's happened over the last, really 5-6 years primarily. And that investment has made processes much more flexible to change. Right. And so part of our strategy is about creating analytic models that can be plugged in and service-oriented architectures into those processes at decision points, so that I can adjust a process on the fly or reconfigure things or make better decisions within a flow using better, insightful analytic models that are plugged in there. Now, that said, that's still difficult, and most companies aren't anywhere near that. That's probably for most companies, probably a 3 to 5 year vision. Just starting with establishing trusted information and the first layer of business intelligence with some analytics and some predictive analytic models around that is usually where people are right now.
There are also some new challenges because there are a lot of the data today, and I understand from some of the sessions that I've been in that the number that I've heard bandied about is around 80% of the data that's important, potentially important to a business, is in an unstructured form.
Yes.
And some of it's streaming, and some of the decisions that they might like to make against those transactions, if you will, whatever they are, actually need to be made more or less in real time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what kind of solutions are you bringing for that situation?
The statistic that you've been hearing bandied about, the 80%, it depends on the organization. Some organizations don't have a lot of unstructured data. Some, insurance companies have an enormous amount, for example. Banks don't have that much, right? So it really depends on what your line of business is. However, if you look at the growth, data growth that's happening, 80% of the growth in data, no matter what your business is, it tends to be unstructured because there's so many new sources of information, and even people tweeting or texting, that's all information.
And this is very new for a business to get their brain, if you will, as such, around what that means.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are still people in the C-suite who probably have never tweeted. And then someone comes to them and tells them, tweets are really important to us.
Right. Well, how is that possible? Yeah.
How do you break through that?
Well, it's interesting because I think there is a generational aspect to it, because there is a certain line where, I know there's teenagers that are in my family that they will not call, they only text, right? So it's become a change from a generational perspective, in that more and more, the younger you go in from a generational perspective, the more likely they are to use some of these technologies as a standard form of communication. And so texting may be, emails already kind of become the communication mechanism for most companies, even banks, right? So a lot of transactions now are conducted via email, or insurance companies. A lot of these
transactions, 20 years ago was
which is outrageous, right? Yeah. And so, I think that more and more will shift even further towards things like texting and tweeting and whatever else, right?
And of course, we need to go where the data is. We can't expect it to come to us.
That's right. That's right. So, I think that right now there's very specific use cases because that sea change hasn't really happened, right? So we are dealing with primarily things like risk and fraud analysis, right? Where I might want to see what kind of interactions did my agents, if I'm an insurance company, have with policyholders. Maybe there was some kind of strange emails flying around out there, or some texts that weren't necessarily on the up and up. Or if if you're a retail company or a CPG company, you might be interested in sentiment analytics around what does the public actually think about my products. So let me look at the blogs and the forums.
And that's actually fairly simple then, because now you've at least got a criteria for sort of filtering things out.
That's right. That's right.
That helps a lot.
Absolutely.
When you're diving in saying,
everything.
I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm sure I'll see it when I recognize it. I'll know.
Yeah, and when you get to things like ROI, I would not recommend that approach, by the way. So when you look at those specific use cases, there are really two patterns of this big data growth that we're seeing. One is on sort of distributed, unstructured, or inconsistently structured information, the blogs, the tweets, the texts, and that kind of stuff, even emails that are spread across many different locations, and very hard to understand what might be valuable in that sea of data. And then there's the other side, which is the streaming stuff that you talked about, where more and more we're instrumenting things in our businesses. We've got different kinds of meters and instrumentation on sensors and things, and even in the supply chain. You go to something as conservative as a manufacturing company, and that entire supply chain is instrumented now, and
Indeed.
feeding back information about temperatures and how many things are passing through per second and defects, and all different kinds of information is pouring in from those sensors. Right. And so
much more than a human brain can correlate.
Oh, yeah, and more than you'd actually want to store. Because
right.
for the most part, they're saying everything's good here, everything's good here, right? So I don't care about the everything's good here. I want to know when something bad happens, right?
Don't bother me till then.
So the what's interesting is, I need to be able to kind of look at that, but not really store it. I don't really care about taking all of that sea of data and the unstructured distributed information or my streaming data and putting it into a data warehouse like I would traditionally, because most of it's garbage, right? Most of it's just noise. It has a relatively low, value density is what I usually how I call it.
That's a good way to express it.
And so what I want to do is figure out where are the needles in that haystack, and how do I get then those needles into my mainstream analytics strategy so I can slice and dice that with the other structured information that I typically manage. And that's where technologies like Hadoop come into play. We leverage Hadoop inside of IBM in a product offering we have called Big Insights, that provides the ability to sift through all of that unstructured information sitting across distributed file systems, find things within it, and allow you to pull that back, do analytics against it, visualize it, and then pull whatever you need back into your warehouse.